Let's welcome to the show the esteemed director and documentary filmmaker, Enver Samuel. Known for his award-winning projects that explore social justice and human rights issues, he joins us this evening to talk about one of his many passion projects, Truth Be Told. We are eager to delve into the powerful stories presented in Enver's series, and would just like to mention to the viewers that currently the series is being playing out on SABC Plus for Freedom Month, this being the month of April. So let me tell you a little bit more about the series before we engage with Enver. Truth Be Told is a 6-part documentary series that puts South Africa's Truth and Reconciliation Commission process under the microscope as the country marks 30 years of democracy. The series is aimed at unpacking the impact of the apartheid era's gross human rights violations, which extend beyond each single criminal incident and continue to affect South Africans individually and collectively. Enver, firstly, welcome to the show and thanks for making time available to us.
Thank you for having me.
Excellent. So, Enver, let's kick off by talking about how did you go about selecting the 6 specific cases featured in Truth Be Told, appreciating there are so many of the different individual aspects and collective aspects from different communities that needed to be brought to the TRC. How did you choose these particular 6?
That was always going to be a difficult proposition because, there are thousands of cases. And how does one weed out and focus on 6 from thousands? In fact, when the TRC concluded, they had about over 30,000 submissions where people came to give testimony about what happened to their loved ones. And from the 30,000, over 300 was selected for prosecution. And it's from those 300 plus that I focused my sort of director's lens at. And basically, once I saw something unique in each individual story, then I decided to do further research. And I'll tell you what was some of the unique factors. Obviously, all the 300 plus stories were unique to each individual family. Mm-hmm. But the ones that stood out for me were because I saw them as a filmmaker, that these stories would be visual, would be interesting, and an example would be Bheki Sizwe Mlangeni, who's one of the 6. He was a human rights lawyer who was sent a parcel bomb in 1991. So as late as 1991, these are not all 60s and 70s and 80s stories. 1991, and in that parcel that he was sent was a Walkmans, and the Walkmans had 2 little minuscule sort of or minute bombs fitted into the headphones. And for the viewers that don't know, a Walkman's was a device where you put in a cassette, and you put in the cassette and you put on the headphones and you press play. And when he did that, so the security police manufactured a bomb to fit into the headphones, and when it pressed play, it basically blew his head off. And they wanted to silence him because he was investigating death squads, apartheid death squads. So already that story is starting to stand out. Mm-hmm. For that kind of callous way that they manufactured, the way to kill him. But his son was 5 years old when he was killed, and his son walked into that study where his father died, and then flash forward 30 years later, he's an adult, obviously. But he's a jazz musician, and he's a well-known jazz musician. Mandla Mlangeni plays in America, the Lincoln Center and things like that, and Standard Bank Jazz Artist of the Year. And he told me that he uses the trumpet to heal. Wow. And to speak to his father. So you can see now why I started to focus on certain stories, because they had elements like that. As a filmmaker, documentary filmmaker, then you say, okay, let's try to tell this story because I think I can engage the audience to want to see more about this story.
Sure. And as you mentioned, it's the visual element.
Yes.
That you stumble upon,
Yes.
from your own words, with the director's lens.
Yes.
I guess that's the important part.
Yes.
Now, naturally, having chosen these 6 particular cases, what has been your objective and what do you hope to achieve by shedding light on these particular stories?
Yeah. So I think, as the title says, Truth Be Told, we're trying to tell the truth about these 6 individuals that were killed during apartheid. But at the same time, we're trying to show the public and South Africans at large how families are dealing with this 30 years later. You know, we're 30 years into our democracy, and all these individuals sort of lived and fought for the freedom that we enjoy today. But their families are suffering because they still do not have justice, and they don't know who killed their loved ones. And so it's to kind of shine a light on families today, even though in a democracy, and there were promised results. You know, they were promised that there would be prosecutions, but that hasn't happened. There are movements to have it happen now. I'm sure you know about all these inquests coming to the surface now, and justice seems to be on the horizon, but it's taken three decades. Mm-hmm. So it's to shine a light on the plight of these victims from the TRC, and how their families are dealing and coping with transgenerational trauma.
Mm-hmm. So it's important that you mentioned 3 decades. I mean, if we look at it from a different way of measuring or marking time, it's almost as if we are an entire generation later,
Yes.
which is substantial. Now, naturally, there's sensitivity in each of these. There's the elements of the individuals and their personal lives. How did you balance the need to preserve the dignity of these individuals? You mentioned Mr. Mulangeni's, you know, the jazz artist, etc., having a very public profile. So the dignity of these individuals and their families, whilst also telling their stories very truthfully and very powerfully.
Yeah. So this is a very important question you ask. So obviously, when the families talk about their loved one, it's going to engage in memory that is very sort of trapped in their psyche. You know, the trauma, and so with each of the families, you know, when I said I selected 6, there were a lot that some fell through from the 6 because some of the families didn't want to engage in their story being told. So the families that agreed, you know, to finally be on were the ones that said, you know, yes, let's go on this journey of telling my father or my mother's story. There are going to be dark periods, because you're gonna speak about a past that for some of them have suppressed and some of them put behind them. But all of them, you know, were able to use this process as a sort of cathartic and healing process. You know, a lot of them actually, which was surprising, would say to me, it's like the first time we're really talking about this.
Right.
It's the first time I'm talking to my aunt about this, or the aunt to the nephew, to tell him how his mother died. You know, so a lot of them found it, you know, a journey of discovery, and at the same time, a lot of them said, okay, now my mother or my father has got their place in so that the South African public can recognize them for what they did. You know, so for some of them it gave them agency to talk about their parent, and some of them, like for example the Motasi case, about Richard and Irene Motasi, the son Tidiso. You know, when we had a whole session with him, where constellation session where the constellation person takes him back to the moment and engages with him, and then the next day when he went to shoot the carrying on shooting, he said to me, Enver, you know, I haven't slept this well in 30 years.
Wow.
After he had that session, you know, so things like that, you know, but obviously, you know, I was closely involved with the Foundation for Human Rights, and they provided psychologists who engaged with the families, especially on the first screening. So it wasn't that we told the family, oh, by the way, watch on Monday at 9 o'clock. They were there
Right.
and part of the process. And so when it came onto TV, they'd already seen it and engaged with it, and it wasn't
I think this is a very important element because of the sensitivity of each of the individual stories. Now, for the benefit of our viewers, we're going to allow you and share with you and indulge you in the trailer to the documentary series before we close out this conversation with Enver Samuel. So here to looking at the trailer.
I live in a prison in my mind.
If he's asking for forgiveness, what am I forgiving? My childhood is broken.
Did she plead with you not to kill her because she had a small baby? No, Mr.
No,
Chairperson.
Mr. Chairperson.
She was not assaulted at all.
I totally don't believe this.
There's been a lot of evil in this country. Let the waters of healing flow to cleanse our land and to bring unity and reconciliation.
I still cannot come to terms, and I try.
My father shouldn't have died the way that he died.
They just gave us bare minimum of what actually took place. They were just ticking the boxes so that they can get their amnesty.
It's going to be difficult for the family to get closure.
To tell a story means that you need to go back. Sorry, Cash.
Truth and Reconciliation Commission is now in session.
Well, that's just the trailer, and I'm sure it's somewhat gripped you if you have any appreciation for the history of our country and what has allowed us to now be 30 years into this democracy, albeit with the challenges that we face. Enver noting that there's so much more, and I hope one day we'd be able to do perhaps an entire hour in terms of what went into shooting this documentary series called Truth Be Told. For the benefit of our viewers, if they would like to watch or screen Truth Be Told, where would they be able to have access to it?
So currently, it first was on SABC3, then it went on to SABC2 to much sort of critical acclaim, and now SABC have put it onto their online platform called SABC Plus, which is a great way to watch, because you can watch all episodes back to back, you can watch them at any time, but it's only on for the month of April in support of Freedom Month.
And what would happen beyond the month of April if there were people interested in watching it?
I think SABC will put it back onto the traditional platform, like SABC 1, 2, or 3. Yeah.
Okay. So, beloved viewers, for the month of April, it's available on SABC Plus. Naturally, the benefit there is demand viewing at your leisure when you're available. If you want to, if I could loan the term, binge watch episode back to back, then you could. But I do think that based on the nature of what you would find in Truth Be Told, going through them episode back to back may be somewhat quite daunting. So you would need to ingest and internalize and appreciate the depth of just these 6 stories from over 3,000 submissions that were made to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. We say thank you to you, Enver, for the time that you've shared with us this evening. Beloved viewers, we're going to take a break and we'll be back. Stay with us here on Prime Live.